Hey, Dan, thanks for joining us today. As we're getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Yeah, sure, Brian. Thanks for having me. I'm a fan, so appreciate being on here with you today. Dan Jurgens. I am working currently with a startup, Boston-based, outside of Boston, called PaymentWorks. Spent about 15 years in business-to-business payments. Before that, working with small companies that were acquired by bigger companies that were eventually acquired by Western Union. So all the way up to the big dog. And then I thought, right when the pandemic started, it would be a good time to change careers. So I joined a startup here, which has been great. It's gone really well, and excited in the direction that we're headed in. But yeah, started as a BDR right out of college, making cold calls, leads up to the sales team, and 6 months later, it was an account executive role, and then kind of just moving up market, SMEs, mid market, enterprise today.
What attracted you to sales?
I think it was probably by accident at first, coming out of school, when you don't always know what you want to do. But I think, one of the things that I do, I have three little kids, and we always go to the bus stop every morning, and it's almost like you can see the kids that are capable of talking to an adult. Hey, Mr. Jurgens, how's it going? How you doing? And I think, that's the way I was raised, growing up, is like, hey, you look somebody in the eye, you say hello, you talk to them, and it just kind of naturally gave me an ability to chat with people comfortably. It's not awkward. It's having a conversation, and it was very natural. And I kind of looked for those kids at the bus today. I'm like, yeah, that kid, I think he could do sales someday. And then the other kids, you're like, I think he might be blowing smoke. I might have to watch out for him a little bit. But that's sales too, right? You got to be trustworthy, but not suspicious, I guess.
And how long did it take you before you felt at home in sales?
I think it's always unnatural to start with, okay, I've never had a
Calling
job, I've never
strangers.
done
Yeah.
anything, and now I'm going to make 70 calls a day. And so, when you start doing that, I think it's when you begin having some success is when you start feeling comfortable, and it's like, okay, is this a repeatable process for me? And if it is, what's the key kind of elements that makes it repeatable, and how do I do that? And so, yeah, I mean, once I was kind of elevated to an account executive, I think there was that self-confidence that comes with it, and be like, okay, I think I can do this, and I think it's exciting. And I was always an athlete, from third grade to through college. And so being able to have that kind of competitive element, and let's have a win at the end of the day. I don't know, after doing this for 16, 70 years, if I could be a salaried employee that says, okay, here's your to-do list for the week, go. And where's the kind of financial and emotional kind of payoff at the end of that?
And what about it motivated you? Was it the income? Was it the challenge? Was it nothing else?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's at first you kind of want to prove it to yourself.
Yeah.
Hey, can I do this? I don't necessarily know what I want for a career. Is this for me? And my kind of competitive nature said, yeah, I want to give it a shot. And when I did start having success, and then when you get that kind of first commission check, the one that really kind of opens your eyes, you're like, okay, yes, this is definitely for me. This is fun, and I want to kind of see where I can go. I've hired a lot of BDRs, managed some BDR teams, but 16th or 17th year of me carrying a quota. I've always had a quota, and I do really kind of enjoy that. I almost run it like my own little business, I guess. And so that's, I think, rewarding in its own right, just having that autonomy.
And can you interview BDRs today and tell how well they're going to do, like you can at the bus stop?
I mean, I think there's a little bit of that. You got to be able to, can they engage with me? Are they going to be memorable? I think that's kind of an important part of any conversation. Do I remember that? Would I like to really kind of speak with them again, or was it kind of a forgettable experience? And I don't always know kind of what that it is. You kind of know it when you talk to somebody, and you say, I kind of believe that was an authentic person. And when somebody, a lot of the times BDRs today are on the younger side, and I don't know if they should be, but it is kind of, do I think this person's going to make good judgment? Are they going to kind of work hard and have that it factor, whatever it is.
Well, because like today we socialize differently. We text versus call,
Yep.
right? So it's very asynchronous, and kind of our social skills are valued highly, but we don't develop them the same way, I don't think.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I mean, so much of business development is kind of that, let's do it through LinkedIn, let's do email sequences, let's do and I think that's valid, because that's what the marketing machine should be, right? But when you're able to, hey, I'd like to learn more, and a BDR is going to initially engage. Is it going to be a message that's easily conveyed, easily understood, and also, is it kind of relationship based? I know I try to kind of build those relationships. I have, okay, 5 I want to give something to today without asking for something in return. And how often can I do that, deposit into the piggy bank without asking for something? I think everybody kind of hates that you only hear from somebody when they want something, sort of thing. So, but yeah, no, I mean, all 3 of them, whether it's email, LinkedIn, the old fashioned cold call, I think they all have a place, and it's just how do we use them appropriately to drive value.
And that core thing hasn't changed, because when you're giving, it feels like, when am I going to get something?
Oh, totally. Totally.
Instead of, now the time will come.
Yeah, I know. It's true. And you got to have that patience, I guess, right? Especially in an enterprise sale, it's you got to realize, I guess, we're not on our timeline. We got to really kind of, first of all, just make sure we're speaking to the right people, and kind of navigating that landscape. I think my team was having a really cool call. We always have these weekly, what did you learn? What can we do better? Industry update. Is there anything anybody wants to share? And, there's normal kind of industry updates, but there's also, people sometimes bring back things we all learned, whether it's like a Sandler tactic or whatever the case may be. And I really appreciate those calls, because it kind of reminds you, stay away from the Ninas, no influence, no authority, who are you talking to? And then when you find somebody that is the decision maker, start providing value. And whether it's success stories you've had with their peers, whether it's, podcasts, whether it's things that would just be relevant. And what I always try to do is reflect, would this interest me? Is somebody giving me like a paragraph that I have to read, or is it like 3 bullet points that I can get through in 60 seconds? I kind of like your, 1-minute videos, because we don't have a lot of time. Getting through 1 minute with something that has kind of a punch at the end that, oh, that makes sense to me, I understand that, is way more compelling than paragraphs, or just cold calls that say, hey, I'd like to bring you through my 3 points of value. Do you understand? And it's really difficult to build any rapport, any pipeline, doing it that way.
How long did it take you to get this mindset? Because I'm
I
sure
think it took a while.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Intuitive
And
at all.
I started selling to, in my first job, it was a small international payments company. So maybe, 300 employees globally. We had offices, little satellite offices in different towns and major cities. And what we were targeting were importers, exporters. So you're calling like the owner of a liquor distributor, and you're speaking directly to the owner, and he's trying to get, a better rate on converting his dollars to euros so he can buy more Merlot and things like that. That's a very different conversation and sales cycle than calling the CFO and the COO and the director of procurement and things like that. They're going to have different priorities, different just ways of communicating with them too. Is it cost based? Is it value based? Are we talking automation? Is it kind of big picture, or more transactional? And I think I started in a very transactional business where we kind of, here's our platform, give us a try. Versus today, I'm selling a platform that has an upfront premium. You're going to have to make an investment in this, I want to make sure I'm kind of checking all your priority boxes. Am I, if I'm not meeting your goals and I need to understand what your goals are first, then we can disqualify this. That's okay. I almost think of it as like the quarterbacks that just run right into the middle linebacker time and time again. Like, it's okay to step out of bounds every now and then. Like, Tom Brady's 75 years old. He steps out of bounds, and he keeps going, and he gives himself more opportunities in the future. But it took a while. I think that's a good question.
Yeah, because now that you're in a much more complex sale, if you take that transactional mindset, it's almost a disaster
It is. It is.
because
I mean, it's not going to. You're not going to get anywhere very fast, and you're not. There's just going to be a lot of no's, right? You're not going to have the relationship that you need to have somebody write a check for $100,000. It's
right,
not going to happen.
it's not going to happen on a one call sale.
No, no way. One of the things that I really like is a mutual action plan. It's kind of, I mean, I'm sure folks do it in a variety of formats, and whether it's a sales book or kind of whatever you want to call it. But if you are able to kind of document the meetings you've had and what the outcome was, and then have them agree with that, yes, that was the outcome we want, and here's a pretty good next step. You have kind of a game plan or a path to arriving at the result that your prospect hopefully wants, and that you want as well. And it's something, we call it mutual, because I'm going to be doing my end. I'll update this, but mutually, I want to understand that you're on board with this plan and this path. And I try to position as this is very non-binding, but it is something that will give us a guide to get through this, because a lot of the times folks don't know how to buy a piece of software, and they don't know who necessarily at their organization needs to also sign off on it. And one of my go-to kind of questions is, have you bought something like this in the past, and kind of who is involved in that process? And if they've never done it, then you probably got a Nina or somebody that's not going to be able to get you kind of where you need to go. But it really does kind of put some accountability on both sides, and it allows you to disqualify pretty quickly too, because I don't know if there's anything more important than disqualifying it, because then you can spend more time on the qualified.
Right, because it could disqualify for a lot of reasons. They're
Sure.
too small, it's too early. And the mutual action plan, or any kind of action plan, gives you an acid test of how interested they are.
Absolutely.
If they
Yeah.
don't do anything, they don't show up for the next call.
That's no good. Yeah. I mean, you're getting close to just, and I try to, you got to be able to have a conversation. When I'm training BDRs, I try to say, explain what we're doing like you'd explain it to your buddy. Hey,
Yes.
you got a new job, or your dad or your mom, hey, did you get a new job? What is it? It's like, oh, well, today payment works is, we make sure folks always pay the right vendor. They never pay a fraudster. We don't need to get into the technical aspects of how it works and features and things like that. But if you say, there's a lot of fraud, certainly during the pandemic, and our goal is to make sure our customers never pay a fraudster. They always know who their vendors are. It's always validated data and validated information. And naturally, in our line of work, folks are going to say, well, how do you do that? And if somebody asks you how you do it, then I think you've probably created a little bit of interest in what you do.
Yeah.
And if they start asking questions, I always say that in the BDR call, now you've got them, because now they want to learn more, and you can either give them what you're comfortable with, or kind of pivot and say, these are all amazing questions. Let's set up a couple minutes for you to talk with our product expert, and we'll take it from there and see if it's something we can learn more about together.
Well, that's it. Because if you take the transactional view, you'll go nowhere.
No,
You
no
got to
way.
kind of build that interest up like a foundation.
Yeah. And I think, transactional places, I learned a lot doing it, and understanding, how to just get people listening to you. But the number one thing on our initial call is, we're not trying to sell anything here. Right. You're trying to see if somebody has goals that align with our solution. And if we can do that, then we can kind of say, okay, we do check a lot of those boxes. Is there anything you'd like to learn more about? But the transactional, starting with that and kind of grinding it kind of makes me appreciate the enterprise sale a little bit more, because it is truly relationship based. And is somebody going to remember me when they're ready to look at this 9 months from now, 12 months from now? If somebody comes and they want me to kind of change my cell phone plan, and it's for $10 savings, it's just not worth it to me right now. But when we're ready and my kids get old enough to have cell phones, now I need to kind of get a new plan. Am I going to remember the guy that was kind of calling me, or is it fairly forgettable? And that's something that's hard to teach, but it's really important in the enterprise sale. And that's why the value drops, the deposits into the piggy bank, I think, go a long way. And just kind of creating that relationship, because giving without asking is important.
And what were some of the milestones in your learning as a sales rep where the lights went on and your game went to the next level?
I mean, I think when you start to ask for feedback from your managers, sometimes you get into a safe place where, okay, I've hit my quota a couple times, I think I know what I'm doing, and you're not putting yourself out there to learn more. And that's what really kind of changed. Okay, well, Dan, it's great, you kind of hit your goal, you hit this, but I think we can do more here. I think we can go up market. I think you can talk to these folks, and this is how you do it. And kind of realizing that and having that self-reflection is really important in terms of getting better. And then also, I guess, taking risks. I mean, one of the biggest risks I took was changing careers right as the pandemic was starting, and it was a safe spot. It was, I didn't go on an interview for 15 years because the companies kept on being acquired. Yeah. And I started in that sales satellite office with, 10, 15 folks. And the first acquisition, it went down to 7. The second acquisition, it went down to 3. Then it was me as kind of the lone sales rep working remotely. And my boss and I were buddies. We had a great relationship, and it was very safe, but there was a ceiling there. And that was kind of a milestone in its own. It's like, okay, am I going to move my family to another city, another location to have that additional career path? Or am I going to kind of take a risk and go from Western Union to a 35-person startup company? And I'm really glad I did it. That's been rewarding and very eye-opening and educational on its own. But I wish, looking back, that I did take some more risks earlier on. You get into those safe spaces and it feels good, and it is where it is. But those are the milestones that I remember, asking to get better, starting to be comfortable enough to take a risk here or there. And it's really, it's going to make you better at what you do.
Because a lot of people are very sensitive to feedback, and very, very few ask for it and want it.
Mm-hmm. I was, as I mentioned, I always kind of played sports growing up, and, thought I was pretty good. And, high school, you're the big fish in the little pond and things like that. And then I went to college, and I realized very quickly, I'm not very good at all. So what can I do to get better? And you kind of have to ask feedback, talk to your position coach, and say, what can I do? Because is it that if a salesperson doesn't have it, that's tough. Is it when you're an athlete and it's God-given ability and you can't get it? Or are there certain things you can work at? Can you find kind of a niche spot on the field that's going to get you playing time? And that's kind of the feedback that if you're willing to do that and you realize you don't have the answers at your point, you just don't want to kind of hear the negative feedback. I think that's what top performers do pretty well, is they're open to it.
And what was it like that first 9 months at a startup, going from a very comfortable situation to a very uncomfortable situation?
Well, enterprise sales, coming from a more transactional, okay, we're gonna give you our platform, and that's not easy on its own, right? Because you're calling into a CFO and saying, hey, you're doing your international payments wrong through your bank. We got the right way to do it, sort of thing. That's a difficult conversation, but it is I'm going to give you this platform, and I'll prove it to you. Give us a shot. And so it is transactional from that standpoint. And then going to the startup, where it's the large upfront premium to get the value that you want, that's going to really change your organization. I don't know if I was ready for the length of the sales cycle. I don't think I closed my first one for 9 months or so, which is anxiety inducing when you're used to the
Yep.
safe place.
Yep.
But once you really do get your relationships where they need to be, and that's essentially your pipeline, and you're able to leverage past relationships and start getting referrals, it became really exciting. But I made this proactive move where I was aware of this company because I was interested in setting up a partnership at Western Union with them. And I just had so many customers that were falling victim to payments fraud, paying a fraudster posing as one of their vendors. And I didn't see anybody else in the market kind of filling that gap. So I was like, I'm going to do this. I see this as kind of a critical gap in the market. I'm going to take the leap. And the first 9 months were nerve wracking, but I knew I was in a space that I really wanted to be in. And I think that's important too, because at some point in my career, it's okay, I can do what your bank can do for a better price. And that's not going to continue on. And having a real compelling product where kind of in your heart, like this is something that's going to bring value to a lot of folks. I wholeheartedly believe in this product. It makes it a lot easier to sell and a lot easier to be believable and be kind of trustworthy.
But you're selling to kind of people with not the greatest of personalities, right? CFOs aren't known for being gregarious and chatterboxes.
Right. And I don't get the CFO in the first meeting, right?
Yeah.
It is,
Accounts payable or
yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of, VPs of finance, sometimes risk officers when we're talking about fraud. It is sometimes procurement because they own the relationship with all their vendors. And that's why, like, I talk to some folks that like, you got way too many stakeholders. I wouldn't want to sell what you're selling. But I kind of look at it like we can spread this value over several different departments. We can bring value to AP and finance, to the risk office, to procurement and purchasing. And whether that allows you to kind of split up the spend and the budget, or you're just getting we're dropping a little bit of value in each of these departments, which is going to make it an easier holistic sell. When you're buying a piece of enterprise software and it's focused on one specific department, but it's going to impact other business processes, other folks are like, well, what do I get from this? And so I think it is a tough sell, which makes it a little bit more lengthy. But when you have a compelling solution that does have value to each stakeholder, you can get champions in maybe surprising places.
yeah.
And so being able to get a champion for this account in purchasing, and they're going to drive it for you. But over here, it was really the risk officer. They got burned by fraud. He's going to drive it for me. You can kind of pivot and turn, okay, this is my guy to quarterback this.
And where does the sale either get stuck or stalled?
I think there's two main places. It's maybe after your first meeting and you just didn't do a good enough job undercovering the pain or their goals, or they they don't want to admit they have a problem or are at risk. And so that's kind of on me, right? I need to be able to ask the good questions. Are you experiencing this? And I try to do it by storytelling what other folks in their area have experienced. We just set up a huge municipality. They came to us because they sent $1 million to a construction company that was actually a fraudster. Do you ever experience that? Are you seeing these attacks? Are you, feeling any of that? Or hey, another large university, we just kind of set them up during COVID. They couldn't get their checks out. They just couldn't. They're meeting in the parking lot. Their signatures on each other's backs. It's horrible. And we were able to give them a platform where they could securely convert those all to electronic payments and not have to worry about the fraud element, because they didn't want to convert checks because they were worried about fraud and they just wanted to do paper. Are you experiencing any of that? And the more stories you have that you can tell, I think that is better than, hey, our product does A, B, C, D. And it's really about that kind of that storytelling. And that's something that that salespeople need to be able to do well, is tell a story that someone can relate to. But yeah, it's that after the first meeting, and then of course the dreaded proposal meeting where, hey, this is the price. are we gonna continue it? And again, you have to do your research and your homework to be able to, I guess it's justify that proposal, right?
And why now?
Right.
Versus,
Why? Where's the urgency?
yeah,
And
because they could, because I could imagine that first call almost always goes well
yes,
because it's
yeah, sure. We've
educational.
heard that. Yeah, we've had that. We've seen that. It'd be nice to have, but
Yeah.
once they see the investment, how do you bring it back to let's regroup. Let's go back to the mutual action plan. On call one, you said X, Y, and Z were your goals. This is going to reach all of your goals. Is that a lot more palatable now? Do you agree with that? Are we bringing value to the other departments and cross-functional work that needs to be done? But I think to your question, those are the two areas. You got to do a good qualifying first meeting, uncover their goals. And when you're going to be delivering that proposal, be ready to justify it, bring it back to their goals. Otherwise, they're just going to see a number.
Yeah. And what do you think you do better than most salespeople?
Um, I guess it's three things. It's first of all, decision making, and there's a lot that goes into decision making. Is this a qualified prospect or is it dequalified? How am I going to spend my time today? What's my approach with this prospect who's a little salty or whatever the case may be. And then it's always kind of the it element. Are we able to just kind of have a conversation, and am I going to be trustworthy and believable? And then the organizational part of it. I've seen and worked with lots of folks, and their sales force is a disaster, right? It's just like we don't even have a pipeline. I don't have things coded the right way. We don't know if this guy's qualified, if he's in my pipeline. And so I try to keep a pipeline that's as small as possible, because once you have a small pipeline, you can address and really start to build the relationships. If it's just Salesforce, Stratus, the matrix, you're going to get lost quick. And sometimes folks are just trying to schedule, hey, I have tasks that I'm going to follow up on today. Well, where does that go? You got to bring it back to a controllable and organized pipeline. I think the mutual action plan is part of that pipeline, because that's your tool for each prospect in your pipeline to keep yourself and them accountable throughout the sales cycle. So I think those are probably the three things that I try to improve on, I guess, each day.
Yeah, because I heard focus, judgment,
Yeah, judgment.
What to work on in what order.
Yeah.
And do you think you got that just off of osmosis over the years of spending time on things that didn't close and not enough time on things that should have closed?
Yeah, no, just years of blowing opportunities, I think, just reflecting, what went wrong there. And then there was a lot that I had to learn going from a transactional sale to an enterprise sale. And I was just open to that, how do we do this? What's going to make me most successful? And just being open to kind of taking the advice from folks who have done it before. In just knowing you don't have all the answers, because you don't.
In the it part, do you think that's learnable, or is it like sports where you either don't have the speed, the height, the strength?
I think I don't think all of it's learnable. I think there's a little bit of like, hey, you got to be able to have this rapport and this relationship and this ability to converse with anyone. My wife kind of tells me, you could just be friends with anybody. Or she tells me, we're at a family event. Can you tell that story? I'm like, well, I wasn't even there. She's like, we just tell it better, And so being able to kind of have that, I think, is important. There's a lot you can learn, a lot you can teach. But I've also seen the revolving door of sales reps, 5 months and gone, 4 months and gone, 6 months and gone. And it's also, they interviewed so well. And, what was it? It was, they just didn't have it. And you're like, well, what was it? I don't know. They just didn't get it. Weren't able to kind of, either they didn't have the work ethic and they just interviewed well. They didn't have the organizational skills, but they interviewed well, or they just weren't able to see eye to eye with kind of what is going to get an enterprise sale from qualification to decision making stage, I guess.
Yeah. And how did you learn that the enterprise steps? Was it through a manager at the company, or because that's very different than transactional?
Yeah, no, I've the folks that hired me have been just amazing and very experienced, and said, this is what's worked a lot of the times, but you do you. Like, we're going to give you some steps that we think are going to help, but be yourself, get through this, be relatable, be memorable, but you need to ensure that the organizational process of moving someone through the sales process is followed, because otherwise you're going to go off the rails. You're not going to be talking to the right people. You're not going to be getting the decision makers, the stakeholders, identifying goals.
And did you get any resistance getting the role?
No, I didn't. I mean, I was in the process of, as I mentioned, kind of setting up a potential partnership, and it was very kind of organic and serendipitous, where it's like, I kind of really like what you guys are doing. It's like, yeah, these have been good meetings. Do you want to work for us, sort of thing? And it was kind of naturally came into, kind of landed there, which was kind of another sign. Like, I think this is time for me to take a chance, take a step, go out of my comfort zone. So it was very cool the way it turned out.
Cool. Hey, Dan, appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Yeah, sure. Dan Jurgens, dan.jurgens at paymentworks.com, LinkedIn as well. So, yeah, really appreciate your time, Brian.